Assalamu alaikum. My name is Adil Shah and welcome to the first ever edition of Student Guide. As this is our first show, we are looking at general study habits of students and with future programs going into depth about students' specific professional life. Joining me on the panel on my right is Kaleem Tahir Sab, Regional Guide South and Manager and Head of Business Transformation at EMX. Assalamu alaikum Kaleem Sab.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
And to my left, Attar Ahmed Saab, who is Naib Muhtamim Amoor Tulaba and Business Analyst at Credit Suisse.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum.
If you enjoy what you're studying, that will really show in your work, and essentially what you put in is what you get out. I really enjoyed, alhamdulillah, my course, and subsequently I managed to obtain a first-class degree.
It's not how many hours you study. What matters is what you put in those hours. And as Atta, quite rightly pointed out, if you enjoy what you're studying, you'll get a lot out of it. And that's really important. And second thing, as I've said, when you are studying in those hours, you really need to be serious with your studies. I just do not believe and cannot buy in that you can be listening to the music, watching TV, have an eye on, Nintendo Wii all at the same time and still be able to do your studies. You really need the right sort of focus.
And Attar Saab, as you've been through a lot of tough times, what came through to you as the best way of studying?
Well, first I'd like to echo what Kaleem Saab said. I think that's very true, particularly during exam time. It's important not to spend too much time watching TV or Facebook or things like that. So I think it's kind of key to have a focus and a direction and pursue your path, both in terms of your study but also in terms of dua and keeping your involvement with the Jamaat very active during that period. So I think it's important to work hard and remember that even though it seems like it at the time, your exam period is not going to last forever. It's a very short duration, and therefore it's important to put in the maximum effort that you can at that time.
Attar Saab mentioned Facebook, and I believe people do have many interruptions while they're studying. So what would you give advice of what's the best way to avoid interruptions such as internet, TV and other sources?
I think it's very much discipline within yourself. You just have to be very disciplined, and this is something you have to acquire as you progress in your studies. Higher up you go, more focus and more concentration is required to grasp the subjects because you're going into more depth. So yes, as long as you're disciplined and focus on the right thing at the right time, you get that. But there are a few techniques to acquire that concentration as well. First of all, students must realize that it is not necessarily required that they study 24 hours a day. They need to be studying maybe 2 or 3 hours max during a day. Doing your A-levels, that's more than enough. Coming closer to your exams time, you probably need to put in maybe a few extra hours. But even at that time, you need to break out your day with other activities. You cannot focus on anything for a very long period of time.
I think in A-levels in particular, a lot of emphasis is placed on independent study and self-motivation, so I think that's definitely the key.
Okay.
I think the answer lies in having a balance in life at all time, not only around exam times. Any student who has studied, with a balance throughout the year would not necessarily have to lock himself inside the room for 20 hours a day to cover his syllabus. So it very much depends, how much effort you put in the earlier months. If you have, you certainly can, have a balanced life even during the exam period.
You should be praying more during exam times because obviously that's important and it will help you as well as your study. So I think it's important to keep balance, and it's also important to remember that namaz is essential. And exam time is definitely one of the times where you need to pray, and it will kind of alleviate your concerns in your faith.
Regarding namaz, Allah Ta'ala has said in the Holy Quran, "Allah bi zikrillahi tatmainul qulub," that it actually gives you some sort of calmness to your heart. And this is exactly what you need at the time of intense studies. You need a period of time where you can take some of that pressure off, so that your body and brain can become ready again to take in more information that you want to cram in at that time. So from practical point of view, that is, really important that you actually have those breaks. And secondly, again, I would say anybody who tries to study 16 hours a day cannot be doing justice to themselves, because if they were having proper breaks in between and doing some exercises in between, it would increase their capacity to learn and retain that knowledge. And scientifically, I think it is proven that your brain also needs times to settle down everything that you've learned. So if you just simply, are studying from a book and go straight to an exam hall, you would not be able to recall a lot of that information. Whereas if you've studied and given some time, a brief break for that information to settle down in your brain, scientifically it has been proven a lot more effective. You're able to recall a lot more. In addition to prayers, there's one other very important aspect that all students should keep in their mind. I have benefited immensely from this particular point. That is, they must write to Huzur regularly, requesting his prayers, Huzur's prayers. And the way to write it is that, a few months before the exams, you start writing, maybe every other week, but coming closer to your exams, you should be writing probably every week. And during your exams, you should actually write, or I used to write before every single one of my exams, simply a letter. You can either fax, nowadays you can email through Al-Islam. So all these facilities are available. I tell you, Huzur's prayers do miracles.